And a good Tuesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Getting a bit of a better picture of our rain chances towards the end of the work week. We'll talk about what the latest run of Future View has to say about that. And then as we progress into the weekend, will the rain chances get out of the picture on Friday, or are they going to linger in the forecast until Saturday and Sunday? So right now, here's a look at your main headlines. Still warm the next 3 afternoons. Now I know the next 3 afternoons a little misleading because the third afternoon is going to be Thursday, and that's when our rain chances are looking to arrive. As you see, the front will begin moving in later on Thursday. But then rain could linger into the weekend. Right now, it's looking very possible that it could impact your fair share of weekend plans. But first things first, let's check in on our current conditions. You can see plenty of blue sky across almost all of our sky cams, and then obviously you can see maybe a few upper level clouds in areas like downtown Macon, up in downtown Dublin, and then down in Houston County, not seeing as much cloud cover from the point of view where we have those cameras pointed. Temperature wise, in the mid 70s, upper 70s, and even a couple areas that have already eclipsed the 80-degree mark. 80 degrees in Roberta, 80 degrees in Unadilla, and 82, the warmest number down in Cordele here before the 11 a.m. hour. Over towards the east, you see plenty of 77s and 78s. 72, still a little bit cooler down in Dodge County this morning. And as you take a look at the eastern half of the United States, still not quite to the same number that we're seeing down in Orlando and over into New Orleans. Finally, at least someone is matching what the temperature is in New Orleans. So Orlando and New Orleans, the warmest numbers that we see. 83 in Houston, 82 in Laredo. And then as you go up into the Midwest portion of the United States, starting to see some temperatures still in the 70s, 81 over in Dallas, 80 degrees in Jackson, 77 in Montgomery, and then going up the eastern United States, 74 Virginia Beach and Charlotte, and then 77 down in Charleston, South Carolina. Dew point temperatures, a good mix of light green and predominantly a dark green color. So we are continuing to see that steady uptick in the moisture content in the atmosphere. Obviously, you see some patches of some darker green over here, and this is all around that gap in that sensor error that we're having over in LaGrange. So don't pay any attention to any areas over here towards the west, kind of within this circle. You can see that most of central Georgia right on the upper 60s, a 69, 67, 68 degree dew point, or you're just above the 70-degree mark, 72-degree dew point over in Gordon. So that's going to play a role with your feels-like temperatures this afternoon, and this would be decent enough moisture to sprout maybe even some afternoon isolated showers or a couple of sprinkles into the forecast. We'll see if Future View is going to pick up on any of that. So we've just continued to see this dark green color get very widespread over the last couple of days. Back over into Mississippi, obviously it's a lot more humid. Into Alabama, it's more of the same story as we have going on. And along the coastal areas, the Atlantic coast, down on the Gulf Coast, that's where you're also continuing to see those dark green shades in the south and the southeast. So here's a look at your feels like numbers. More areas than not are already feeling like the 80-degree mark at the very least. Feels like 80 in Wrightsville, 80 in Dublin, 81 down in Vidalia, 84 in McRae, 86 in Gordon, and then 88 at the warmest already in Unadilla. This is definitely holding on to some summertime heat. If you're not feeling like the 80s so far, you're still somewhere in the 70s. Feels like 76 in Macon, 79 in Warner Robins, 72 down in Eastman. So as those temperatures continue to get warmer and warmer, we're going to look at the feels like temperatures to also get warmer and warmer. We'll talk about how high those climb as we go into the heat of the day later this afternoon. First, look at the wind and the wind gusts. Not much going on in the way of winds. If anything, they're blowing in variable directions. You can see kind of coming in from the northeast, the farther southeast that you live, more of an easterly breeze here, and then coming up from the south. So obviously just some variable winds. You could notice a steady breeze at some times, but overall we're not looking at really gusty winds in your forecast throughout today. Here's a look at your actual temperatures. 82 by the time we roll into 11 a.m. at the top of the hour, then 85 as we go into lunchtime, and then popping up into the upper 80s, 88s and 89s as we head into the heat of the day around 3 and 4 o'clock. Well, we hit 90 degrees for a high temperature yesterday. Obviously, that graphic doesn't have us getting quite up to that 90-degree mark, but we've been going above what the actual graphics have been saying over the last couple of days. So your high temperature yesterday, that was 4 degrees above average for this time of year at 86 degrees. And then your low yesterday morning was about 3 degrees below that average. So we continue to have a pleasant feel, and the mornings have been an absolute treat. Obviously, we transitioned into the start of fall yesterday. The mornings are going to be the main time frame where you're actually going to feel a little bit of those fall-like temperatures, but still temperatures down in the 60s for morning lows. We probably need some values well down into the 50s, and then some high temperatures that are getting down into the 70s before we really actually have a true fall feeling 24 hours here in central Georgia. 100, the record yesterday back in 1925. Back in 1913, we had a morning low temperature of 45 degrees. So this is borderline getting into a bit of a winter feel if this are yesterday's date all time back in 1913, and obviously a high temperature of 100 degrees. Our temperatures have been warm, but very thankfully we're not getting anywhere close to that triple-digit mark, and I don't think we will for the remainder of the calendar year. So no rain yesterday. Your departure of rain now stands at just over 4.5 inches of rainfall above where we should be at this point in the calendar year. Sunrise 7:23 yesterday, and sunset was at 7:31. So I do imagine that sunset tonight will be right there on that 7:30 mark, and that's obviously going to continue to decrease, and we'll get closer and closer to the 7 p.m. sunset as we go into the month of October. I think it's going to be around October 15th or 16th when we finally get our last 7 p.m. sunset, and then the sun will continue to set before 7 p.m. I don't know if I was just saying a.m. or not. Sorry, having a bit of a Monday on my Tuesday. Brain's a little bit jumbled. Right now, staying warm for today. Feels like the low 90s, maybe even some areas into the mid 90s, just seeing what the dew point temperatures are currently sitting at. 91 for a high temperature with some mostly sunny skies. 91 is already 5 degrees above average for this time of year, and if we have some feels like temperatures that get into the low and mid 90s, we're going to start to flirt with that territory where we're about 8 to 10 degrees warmer than what the actual average high temperature is. So I didn't think I'd have to show this graphic too much more, but it is a good reminder as we do have this stretch of 90s that continues to roll on. It can make the concrete and asphalt quite warm out there. So we've been in a below average stretch of these afternoon high temperatures. So obviously it has been a conducive environment to maybe take your pets out on a walk. Well, it's getting into a bit of that pattern where it is a little bit too hot to trot on those hard surfaces like concrete and asphalt. If you do walk your pets on there, just make sure that they have some form of insulation, or try to only put them on those hard surfaces occasionally. Try to keep them in the grass more often than not. And your actual high temperatures are expected to increase from this afternoon into tomorrow afternoon. Now, very thankfully, Wednesday is going to be the warmest that we get. I don't quite think we'll make it to the 95-degree mark, but we may just be a degree or two shy of it. So obviously, there's a look at the concrete and asphalt temperatures. When your actual air temperature is at these values, 140 degrees, 155 degrees is that asphalt. Once again, asphalt is going to be a couple degrees warmer than the concrete. So if you had to pick a surface to have your pets out on, it would definitely be concrete as opposed to asphalt, but it should be grass over either of those hard surfaces. Continue to make sure that you're taking care of your furry friends as we continue this warm stretch of weather. So your heat indices today. This graphic has also been undershooting what the heat indices have climbed to each and every day. I believe that these numbers are probably going to peak somewhere around 93, 94, maybe even 95 degrees later this afternoon, but it's only going up into the low 90s. Now, some areas may only have feels like numbers into the low 90s, but I do believe a good amount of central Georgia has the potential to climb even higher, especially if you have a little bit more moisture in your forecast. So satellite and radar picture, we had some passing cloud cover this morning, didn't do anything in the way of rain, but now we take a look at that satellite and radar image, and there's still some clouds lingering up in north central Georgia, the farther north that you travel. That's actually associated with plenty of active weather that looks to be moving into the northwest corner of the state of Georgia. Definitely our fair share of some thunderstorms back over here in the northern portion of Alabama, back over into Tennessee. And you can see these highlighted green polygons. Those are going to indicate your flash flood warnings. So none of this looks to be making an entrance into central Georgia throughout today. This is going to be a disturbance way up to the north, and this is kind of the tail end of it that could be clipping North Georgia. but otherwise central Georgia today should stay mainly clear of the rainfall. So let's go into future view, see what it has to say about our rain chances this afternoon. Well, 3 p.m., mostly sunny skies, maybe a blip or two here or there. Overall, just really a slim, minuscule chance of an isolated shower, or also more so, maybe even just a few sprinkles in the forecast. So really not looking at much rain throughout Tuesday, and that pattern will continue into your Wednesday. Here's Wednesday afternoon, maybe a bit more cloud cover in the picture to provide you with a little bit more shade, but obviously still just looking at the chance of a few isolated showers or maybe even a sprinkle chance. Good enough for me to throw a 10% on there because we have moisture in the forecast. Wouldn't doubt that future view could be possibly underestimating the rain chances. And then we continue into your Wednesday evening where you do see plenty of rain chances actually finally getting closer to us. Well, this will be our first sign that our frontal boundary is beginning its approach into the state of Georgia. It's actually going to send our fair share of widely scattered showers and even a couple of thunderstorms north of the I-85 corridor. And if you're looking for I-85, that's going to be this interstate right here that I'm running my finger along, and it goes all the way up into northeast Georgia. So I-85 is definitely going right along with the tilt of this front as it does make its way through, but it doesn't quite look like your rain chances down to the south of I-85, closer to I-75, getting over to I-20, I-16, that you're really not getting it much in the way of impressive rainfall until we get into Thursday. Now, Thursday, you will see plenty of that cloud cover. Some scattered showers still are in the forecast as many people walk out the door on Thursday morning. So if you have plans for work to maybe travel over into Alabama, farther over to the west, you're going up to the metro Atlanta area early in the morning, then you could come across a couple showers, but mainly into the afternoon time frame. So as our temperatures continue to warm up on Thursday, like I mentioned, the next 3 afternoons are still going to be warm afternoons. So obviously the first part of your Thursday starts out nice and dry and mostly sunny before finally your temperatures continue to warm up to around that 90-degree mark. And then your fair share of scattered showers, and not only just scattered showers, a couple pockets of storms begin to pop up. So that's something we haven't had to deal with in quite some time, but a frontal boundary is a forcing mechanism and it can create some good organization for your rain chances. Well, this is continuing into that warmest window of the day on Thursday, right there at 4 p.m. So after we get past about 5 to 6 o'clock, we transition more into sunset time, and sunset, like I said, is about 7:30 as of right now. So once we get closer and closer to sunset, your temperatures begin to cool, and then after sunset, obviously they substantially cool down without or in the absence of seeing any of that sunlight that does warm the surface. So now we go to 7 p.m. on Thursday. It just looks like mostly sunny, mostly cloudy skies, and a couple of scattered light showers, still not really much in the way of impressive rain chances, maybe a few storms during that afternoon window. But as we go into the overnight hours, it doesn't look like we have much left in the way of rain. Now, this latest run of future views picking up that maybe we'll see another spurt of some scattered showers, some pockets of heavier rain, maybe even some rumbles of thunder into the overnight hours. We could very well see that, but I don't have as much confidence in that. I think your rain chances really get out of the possible severe criteria as we go into the overnight hours each and every day. But right now, future view goes as far as 3 a.m. on Friday, and we'll pick it up with the long range models. But as we go into the evening show later tonight, Ben Jones will have the latest run of the graph model as we go into the first part of your Friday, so we can help you kind of plan out your day, and we'll hopefully get a better idea of what football Friday night is looking like this time tomorrow. But speaking of some of the storm potential, and I was talking about possible severe parameters, well, we did show you the day 3 storm outlook yesterday, and it did have this green shaded area back up to the north and the northwest. Well, we have seen that transition and push down into the state of Georgia. All of central Georgia is included in a low-end level 1 out of 5 risk for seeing some potentially strong or to maybe even severe weather in the form of those thunderstorms. What this means is a thunderstorm or two could pack a punch with maybe some gusty winds. We can maybe getting up to about 50, 55 miles per hour. And of course, with that going to be frequent lightning, some pockets of heavier rainfall, but we're really not looking at anything besides maybe just a stronger thunderstorm really in the forecast. That's all you need to know. And that level 1 is really just covering the bases for obviously any of those thunderstorms that try to pack a bit of a punch. But we'll continue to let you know if there is going to be anything that pops up in the way of severe weather. Obviously, we have that uptick in moisture. We'll have some warm temperatures for the first part of Thursday. which we'll talk more about just now. So taking a look at the next 3 days, 91 for that high temperature today. Feels like temperatures in the low 90s and maybe a couple areas into the mid 90s. Well, if we continue to see that uptick in the high temperature, how about 93 for an actual temperature on Wednesday? I definitely believe that feels like numbers are going to be at least in the mid 90s. We could even have some upper 90s in the forecast. So I've been avoiding trying to say hot because obviously we've just been right there around the 90-degree mark recently. I would definitely classify Tuesday and Wednesday afternoons as feeling hot because you definitely have the return of that moisture. You are noticing it more and more. It's not full blown like it is in the summertime months, but it definitely is helping make it feel a couple degrees warmer outside. And once you get into mid and upper 90s, you're not too far away from that triple digit mark. So obviously definitely some pretty hot afternoons in store Tuesday and Wednesday with that 10% chance of a sprinkle or an isolated shower. Now Thursday is a bit of a tale of two forecasts. 67 to start out for your morning low temperature. We might have a few more clouds in the picture to help keep that temperature just a tad bit warmer as you walk outside on Thursday. Then 90 degrees for a high temperature. So remember what I was saying in that run of future view. The first half of your Thursday as we go all the way up to about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon is predominantly going to be dry. We might start to see some clouds push in, but overall, I think mostly sunny skies are going to welcome you out the door into the late morning time period all the way up to lunchtime. So that's going to lead to a warm up to that 90-degree mark before scattered showers and a couple of storms get going in the afternoon. So it's going to be a pretty quick warm up. We're not going to really have those feels like numbers well into the mid 90s all afternoon long like we could have for your Wednesday afternoon. But on Thursday, it does look like the warm-up is going to be fairly short-lived and a pretty good chance of those widely scattered showers and storms. I put a 60% chance right now. The last two model runs of Future View haven't quite reciprocated that coverage idea, but we'll continue to backtrack that. Maybe we'll try to give you more of a localized forecast about which areas could expect the rain. And right now, it is really looking like the farther north and northwest that you live on Thursday, you have a better chance of seeing some of those scattered showers and a couple of storms. And then as we transition into Friday, I think the rest of central Georgia should get their fill of rain. So your afternoon high temperatures, somewhere around 90 or just above the 90-degree mark. Very thankfully, Wednesday is the warmest temperature I put on your 7-day forecast. In between Wednesday all the way into Friday, a 48-hour period, we are expecting about a 10-degree temperature drop in those afternoon high temperatures. Finally back below average, and we'll continue to keep the low and mid 80s around as we roll into the beginning of the weekend, Friday and Saturday. Average high this time of year, 86 degrees. By the time we transition into the weekend, we very well could see that average high temperature dip down to 85 degrees. So what we have been seeing as of right now is we're starting to change seasons. On average, we typically see maybe about every 5 days to 7 days, that average high temperature will start to tick down just a touch. And then, of course, as we go into, the morning low temperatures are going to start to do a very similar thing. So let's talk about your humidity day by day. A quick reminder, dew point temperatures in the 70s, very muggy or getting into a very noticeable moisture in the atmosphere. And then you get into dew point temperatures in the 60s. You're feeling it a little bit, but it's not overbearingly humid like it is with dew point temperatures in the 70s. Then you get down into the 50s and the 40s. That's where you really get some comfortable and some pleasant conditions with a lot of dry air in the forecast. So overall, your humidity actually does look to take a bit of an increase as we go all the way into Thursday and Friday. This muggy meter hasn't exactly been entirely accurate as of recently, so we'll continue to monitor it. But overall, I think you should plan on your dew point temperatures being right on this line over the next couple of days, because obviously we see more dew point temperatures in more dark green shaded areas as of right now. And we can still see that the point for Tuesday is right smack dab in the middle of dew point temperatures in the 60s. So obviously I think we're going to be a bit more humid than this is indicating, but it does look like we get a bit of a downtick as we go into the weekend. Still going to notice the humidity, and we may still have some rain chances along with that humidity as we head into the weekend, but hopefully going to see at least a little bit of slightly cooler and slightly drier air try to enter the forecast behind this frontal boundary. It's not going to be very robust whatsoever, but we'll talk about that after we go over your rain chances according to your long-range models. So 11 a.m. on Friday, still plenty of scattered showers in the near vicinity, and then it looks like as we go into that afternoon time frame, just like what we're seeing on Thursday, we will start to see the coverage of rain extend and obviously kind of blow up out of nowhere. So right now you're seeing the European and the GFS still not necessarily agree, but there is at least some overlap. Right now, I think the Europeans definitely doing a better job because we can actually see the organization of these shower and storm chances all up along the East Coast. And I'm hoping that this front will be just out of the area. We'll continue to push through central Georgia as we go into your Friday evening. Hopefully we can eventually clear conditions out for football Friday night. But overall, it does look like it's going to be a pretty messy time frame for most of the day on Friday, and then as we transition into Saturday morning, still plenty of rain chances in the forecast. We could even see a lot of those linger into Saturday evening. Obviously, a lot of eyes are probably just to the east of Atlanta, wanting to know what that forecast is in Athens. I would still say there might be some rain chances into kickoff time for the Alabama game. Now we go into Sunday, still plenty of rain chances are trying to linger all across the southeast. It's really just us, North Carolina and South Carolina, maybe getting upwards into portions of Virginia, maybe in even Tennessee. This is not the best resolution. This just kind of gives us a general idea. Are we still going to have a few rain chances in the forecast? But normally we can take a look at this when we have a frontal system arriving. There's a lot of organization, a lot of agreement ahead of time, but we're not necessarily seeing that as of right now. It does just look like the rain chances start to slim down as we go into the beginning of the week next week, but not completely go away whatsoever. So long range models go all the way out to 2 p.m. or Tuesday at 4 p.m. And just showing you all of this, it could be kind of a period of on again and off again showers and storms over the course of this weekend. How much rain are we looking to get out of that, all of these rounds of rain? Well, once again, just like yesterday, North Georgia is going to see some higher rainfall totals than we are down here in central Georgia. And right now, hinting at about just shy of an inch here in Macon, maybe about around an inch in Albany. Overall, it looks like pretty good agreement, at least amongst the GFS model, that most areas here in central Georgia are going to hover between the half-inch of rain mark all the way up to maybe about an inch and a half of rain. Now let's see what the European does initialize, and this does have a bit better resolution. So you're obviously seeing different shaded areas and different localized areas. So as you go up to the north and the northeast, that is obviously indicating lots and lots of rain up into North Carolina, upstate South Carolina. We could have some patches of those red colors maybe built in a select few areas. Those would be some totals that are around 2 to maybe even 2.5 inches, but still most of central Georgia finding themselves anywhere from about a half inch of rain all the way up to maybe about an inch and a half of rain, which isn't a whole lot, but it is definitely something, and it is going to at least do something to at least getting a start to trying to get rid of some of these dry conditions that have settled in. But now let's talk tropics. Hurricane Gabrielle, a Category 4 storm as of this 11 a.m. update. It hasn't changed much. It has just still maintained its intensity from this time yesterday, where it got an uptick into a Category 3 storm, I do believe, and then got upgraded into a Category 4 as of yesterday afternoon. Still going to maintain that major hurricane status right now all the way until we get into Wednesday evening, and then it will bump back down into a Category 2. Now, very thankfully, Gabrielle is not going to be impacting anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean. So now it's continuing to turn away from Bermuda. We finally have that turn to the east-northeast and moving at a good clip at about 20 miles per hour. Pressure is down to about 948 millibars, 140 mile per hour sustained winds. But just looking at the satellite imagery, Hurricane Gabrielle is not a very big storm whatsoever. It is really packing a punch with these impacts in a very select area. So obviously it's in the Atlantic Ocean, so we don't really need to focus on that as much. But the main thing you need to know is Gabrielle continues to move away from Bermuda, continues to move away from the United States, and will continue over into areas of Western Europe is what it looks like by the time we roll into the end of this weekend. It will obviously still have some tropical storm force winds, but as it moves closer and closer to Europe, looks like this last timestamp right here, 40 mile per hour winds. So that's where you're starting to flirt with the dividing line between tropical storm status and tropical depression status. But overall, still some sustained winds of 40 miles per hour and definitely your fair share of pockets of heavy rain impacting Portugal and Spain possibly. That would definitely be something to see, and that could definitely result in some inland flooding, especially in some possibly mountainous terrain over there in Western Europe. Don't know too much about the topography of Western Europe, so maybe I'll go and do some research about that before coming to that assumption. So tropics outlook, we still do have these two other areas behind Gabrielle that are down in the Atlantic Ocean. This first area is this very disorganized cluster of showers and thunderstorms. It's actually down more so towards the south and southeast of where this orange X is indicated, but obviously still indicating that it's going to move up to the north and the northwest, just north of Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and eventually into Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas. And obviously what's past that is going to be the southeast United States. From what I've seen, we're not seeing a lot of long-range models pick up on the idea of a potential landfall on the Atlantic coast of the Carolinas anymore, but it is something we'll continue to keep an eye out for, because if it does, whatever tries to organize or doesn't organize, there's still a lot of tropical moisture that it could send fair share of rain chances up into those areas, and that's in the near vicinity of us. And if there is some form of a low pressure system, that would result in that counterclockwise rotation I talk about. So obviously moving up into North Carolina, Georgia would be down towards the southwest of the Carolinas, so that flow could send in our fair share of rain chances, but not seeing good agreement that this is actually going to get its act together whatsoever. 20% chance of developing over the next 2 days and a 60% chance of developing over the next 7 days. We'll continue to keep a very close eye on it, because it is the system that is forecasted to have the path closest to us here in central Georgia and the United States. But this wave behind it does have a much better chance of developing, even despite the plumes of Saharan dust that are stretching into this portion of the Atlantic Ocean. So obviously it continues to fight off that significantly drier air, and it is continuing to really see the chances of development improve over the next 2 days and especially over the next 7 days at the highest number that you can get, 90% chance of development, but still about a 50-50 shot if we see another named storm within the next 48 hours with this tropical wave. So let's take a look at your names. What are the next two names to claim? That would be Umberto, which is our H name storm. I know obviously the pronunciation doesn't look like how that is spelled, but then you go down to the I name, which is going to be Imelda. I'm still working on that one, so bear with me with those names. Imelda, we'll call it for now. So both these next two named storms are obviously a bit hard to pronounce, but the more and more you watch coverage, you'll start to get the hang of it if any of those are going to be of potential concern. The big thing that I want to emphasize is if we get the H named storm, which would be Umberto, over the course of the next 24 hours, we'd be right on pace with last year's hurricane season. Tomorrow is going to be the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene forming. So obviously the H named storm last year, and then getting our H named storm as of this year. We're continuing to follow a very similar pace to last year's hurricane season, but it's still going to take some time in order to tell if we're actually going to reach those averages or even be above average like we were for last year's hurricane season. Overall, none of that tropical stuff is anything you need to worry about over the course of your next 7 days. I think the bigger concern is when will these rain chances get out of here as we head into the weekend. Obviously, we need some rain, and we will take whatever rain that we can get. Warm for the first part of Thursday before later in the afternoon those scattered showers and thunderstorms pop up in the picture. But then by the time we roll into Friday, it'd be very beneficial if we could get the rain chances out of here right at 5 o'clock on Friday to clear things out for football Friday night. But right now it is looking like your rain chances are lingering into most of the weekend, if not the entire weekend. So your rain chances still at 20 and 10%. Those are just to kind of cover the bases right now. We're still trying to get a better picture, and we probably won't really fine-tune those until future view. Our graph model actually gets the weekend within view. So getting the next model run this time tomorrow is going to give us a much better idea about how things are going to play out over the course of this weekend. So be sure to tune in for the extended forecast tomorrow at 10:30. We'll give you a better idea about Friday's rain chances, continue to fine-tune the exact timing of when rain does enter the forecast on Thursday. But overall, not going to need that rain gear for Thursday morning. You're definitely going to want to bring it out, however, because it could be a bit of a messy afternoon, especially the farther north and northwest that you live. It may take a little longer for rain to get into areas like, say, Lawrence County, Dodge County, Telfair County, farther down to the south and the southeast. I think the better rain chances for those areas would be Friday as opposed to Thursday, and we'll continue to fine-tune tune that weekend forecast. But one thing is for certain, the cloud cover and rain chances should keep our numbers down below average and somewhere in the low to mid 80s as we go across the weekend. And it looks like we'll continue with that pattern into the very beginning of next week. So that's going to do it for your extended forecast this Tuesday. Be sure to tune in. Like I said, tomorrow at 10:30, we'll give you a better idea about how the beginning of your weekend is shaping up.